And we'll start with a moment of reflection.
Let us be mindful of the needs of all our citizens and advance only those causes that will ensure peace and harmony in our community now and always.
Land acknowledgement. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather today is the land traditionally used by the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Chinootan people. We acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous peoples with whom we share this land today. Are there any declarations of a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. We have some minutes. I'd like a motion that the minutes of the November 25th, 2025 council meeting be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Seven, second by Councillor Wagner. Discussion on the minutes. All in favor, and that's carried. No petitions, no delegations, public meeting. So I'll need a motion that council rise and go into the committee of the whole to receive reports and recommendations. Moved by Councillor Brick, second by Councillor Herget. All in favor, and that's carried. And then I'll give it to Councillor Brick for planning and development.
Thank you, Mayor Nowak. We have a staff presentation on the new official plan. I would call the Director of Development Services for that one.
Thank you, Chair Brick. I just want to introduce Joe Nether. He's going to be giving a presentation tonight on two things. One, the finalization of our background discussion papers that we've been working on for the official plan, and a bit of a summary of engagement that we've done to date for your information. So turn it over to Joe. Welcome, Joe.
There we go. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor Nowak, members of council, and 3 cheers to your roads crew for getting us here nice and safely tonight. Joining me in delivering half of this presentation is my planning colleague, Emily Stanley, who you will have seen at our workshops to date as well. So yes, as the director has mentioned, it's a pretty big milestone night tonight. We're here to provide an update on the overall project, including final draft discussion papers for council's receipt this evening. If we can go to the next slide, please. The important milestone that we're reaching tonight is the conclusion of our second phase of work on this project. Our project team, alongside staff and with agency supports, have been completing the various discussion papers that are in your agenda tonight, distilling a wide range of issues of legislative change, of local context, of what we're seeing in some other places, and all to inform the work that we will be setting out and starting effective tomorrow, I guess, which is the actual preparation of the draft official plan itself. So you may not hear from us as a project team for a little bit, but rest assured we are going to be very busy working away at getting this draft plan ready in order to activate our next steps. And I'll obviously get to those at the end of this presentation. So we have been out and about and very busy. We've seen a number of you at some of our sessions of late. This includes including an appearance at the Fall Fair in late August. We ran through our workshop with you at the end of October. We have also concluded a conversation with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation as initial project conversation with them as well, and they will be interested in seeing some of the content as we work through the draft official plan itself too. In Cross Hill on November the 12th, another beautiful weather night, now that my memory is working, we had a delightful public workshop with over 70 attendees to discuss an overall vision statement and what should that big picture story be going through for the township. We had put forward a 4-sentence suggestion. We have a lot of feedback about that, including that might be a little too long. So we'll be working and refining that to provide an update along with the rest of the draft plan once that is released and available. Alongside staff, we also concluded our agencies workshop and a good deep discussion with them at the middle of November. A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus a whole series of emails and plus a whole series of conversations with your planning team here results in the discussion papers that are before you tonight. So For anybody who might be joining us on this adventure for the first time tonight, these discussion papers were part of the initial project scope. The general point being to give some background, some context, do a little bit of research as we're going through these updates to the plan itself to make sure the policies, the vision, the content that is in this document remains up to date, that it remains relevant, that it remains applicable, and overall good planning and in the public interest for the township. We've walked through some of the legislative and policy changes, including the removal, rather, of upper tier planning responsibilities down to the township. You are in the driver's seat in terms of driving some of this content, recognizing that the approval of the updated official plan will now reside with the ministry itself, of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Each of these discussion papers contains some policy directions. They were preliminary directions when we were out in October and November. We're coming forward to these as final and recommended policy directions, all of which we're going to use in order to inform the writing of the draft policies themselves. Each of these papers talks about the legislative context that sets some of these discussion points. We've reviewed the local context. What does this mean in Wellesley? What makes Wellesley different? What makes Wellesley special? What is it that we need to remember when we set about doing this writing next? We discuss in detail some of those key research items in each of these papers in order to make those recommendations. Each of the papers have been updated from the draft to the final state that include a basic light synopsis of what we have heard through engagement and through consultation, on the understanding that you also have a detailed engagement summary within your agenda package as well, so you can see it directly from the public's mouth as well, not just what's being filtered through me and Emily as project planners. And again, at the risk of monopolizing the microphone here, this is where I'm going to turn it over to Emily to discuss the 6 papers that are being presented on residential lands, on employment lands, commercial needs associated with that planned population growth itself. A very major focus topic area of the settlement area, boundary expansions criteria, and going through a full assessment and closure on some of the work that the township has done in the past on what land should have those settlement area permissions within them. Once we establish some decisions there, we have some principles developed for what a scoped secondary plan, what policy should guide development that comes through those, and then the detailed paper itself on the individual land use policies, a big basket of information that guides some of these. To be clear, no decisions have been made at this point. These all remain preliminary directions. The project team alongside staff have a lot of work to do over the coming weeks and month plus in order to make some of those decisions themselves. And of course, we welcome any input from the public, from agencies, from stakeholders all throughout this process at whatever time it is that we happen to get it. On the understanding, of course, this is a really great time to get some feedback in. On the next slide, I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thank you. So the first paper that we produced was the residential growth and housing and intensification paper. So the purpose of this was to provide recommendations for managing population simultaneously to looking at housing trends, specifically in the Township of Wellesley and nearby. So there were 3 policy directions that came out of this report. The first being setting and prioritizing housing goals, which recognize meeting local housing demands and needs. The second is considering moderate increases to density and intensification in the right places of the township. And then the third was to plan with flexibility, preparing for a range of population scenarios to occur in the future and the importance of being able to adjust those policies through a flexible nature. Next slide, please. The second paper that we looked at was employment lands. And so the purpose of this was to provide guidance for meeting employment lands into 2051 in the township. So 2 policy directions came out of that report. The first being identifying and designating new employment lands to address the shortfall. Currently, there's 5 hectares of vacant employment lands within the township. So these lands that would be required could be planned adjacent to existing servicing to support existing infrastructure already in the township. And then the second was piggybacking off of the rural investment readiness strategy that was produced, advancing priority areas. So part of that recommendation is looking at updating the local official plan to ensure employment areas are aligned with the provincial planning statement, as well as Bill 162. Next slide, please. The next paper that we looked at was commercial needs. And so this one reviews the township's commercial and retail spaces and considers future use and considerations. So 5 policy directions came out of this report. The 3 are which are on the slide, just as examples. The first being new commercial spaces are mostly small retail centers focusing on the Wellesley urban core and the 4 corner areas within the rural settlement areas themselves. The second is supporting access to commercial spaces, regardless if you are coming by vehicle or pedestrian or another mode of transportation. And then the third is looking at commercial spaces to be planned and anticipated based on population projections and that population's specific needs. Thank you. So then the next paper that we looked at, the 4th paper, was the Settlement Area Boundary Expansion Criteria Report. And this is to provide suggested criteria for expanding the settlement area boundaries within the township. So 2 policy directions that came out of this report were looking at the evaluation criteria themselves being categorized by themes. So one being agricultural resources, another servicing, another land needs, complete communities, and more. And then the second was determining a settlement area boundary expansion removal process. And so we are currently in the first phase of that. There's a timeline at the bottom of the screen. We're currently in the first phase of that, which is called for expansion requests. And that is until the end of next week, I believe. And then we'll go into evaluating those requests with the township. Next slide. Thank you. And so the 5th paper looks at the scope secondary plan itself. This paper provides a foundation for scope secondary planning for the designated growth areas of Wellesley. There's over 20 policy directions in the report themselves. So, and those are all based on different themes from urban design to stormwater management, transportation, road hierarchy, et cetera. So some of those examples are supporting opportunities for daily physical and social interaction in a safe, inclusive, and accessible community, promoting efficient and phased development through the coordinated planning for transportation and municipal services, and applying conservation objectives, including water conservation, energy conservation and generation, emissions reductions, and waste management. And then the last paper, as Joe mentioned, is kind of a basket paper, a catch-all, provides several foundational themes for policy development for the new official plan, addressing topics ranging from agriculture to source water protection to climate change. So there's over 40 policy directions in this report itself, depending on the topic at hand. And this report does kind of take a different structure than the other reports, primarily because it does address so many different topics. So some of the preliminary policy directions that came out of this were drafting guiding principles for key foundational uses and designations, such as protecting agricultural lands, maintaining source water protection, housing affordability, and other topics that are also covered in the other reports themselves. Maintaining consistency and conformity with the provincial planning statement that came out in 2024, as well as the regional official plan, and ensuring the policies we need to bring over from the regional official plan are brought over into the Wellesley official plan. And then as well, an example from the climate change section is applying sustainability as a guiding lens for compact, green, efficient growth that supports green infrastructure, active transportation, and climate resilience. And I'll pass it over to Joe on next steps.
Thank you, Emily. So As lightly introduced earlier, we conclude after tonight, we begin our work on phase 3, which is preparing the draft plan itself, text and mapping. That includes the scope secondary plan requirements themselves. We intend on being back with you for a workshop conversation as a part of that, and we will be back out with the full suite of public engagement opportunities as well. That phase officially concludes with a statutory public meeting, which remains on target for later in spring 2026. I guess it's this spring in about a month. Concluding out of that meeting, we take the final feedback. We have our final intense discussions with staff in order to produce a final version for your adoption. We currently remain on track to deliver that at the end of Q2 of next year. I'm not sure if we have a next slide at this point. We have a thank you slide. So that concludes the presentation. Anybody who's watching, our links to the project's website. The address rather for the project website is there. The QR code can be scanned to take you to the Engage Wellesley page in order to find all the information that we're producing on this project and stashing and storing up there. I turn back to you, Mayor Nowak, for any questions that the committee may have for us.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Councillor. Questions? No questions? I have a couple. I'm just curious a little bit about the Indigenous consultation. What was involved with that so far?
Sure. So to Mayor Nowak, the work starts off with a reach out from the municipality, the township itself, direct to the nations that have been identified by the province as having, I'm just call it an interest in land matters within the municipality itself. That was 2 letters total, one going to the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the other going to the 6 Nations of the Grand River Elected Council. We have 1 response back so far. Being, as mentioned, the MCFN are interested in being a part of the conversation and understanding the draft policies, and they have identified some matters that are of interest to them, chiefly around what I'll call cultural heritage and archaeology, but also further and downstream involvement. And this would include early engagement on future planning projects and potentially on some development applications as well. There is a policy in the 2024 provincial planning statement that does speak to early engagement with Indigenous communities on such matters. And rest assured, we in the project team will ensure that we have appropriate policies and steer those to an appropriate and respectful place.
Okay, so it sounds like they will have some suggestions and some direction that they would like to see.
That is correct, and also not at all uncommon.
No, okay. Excuse me. Expansion requests, and I think you mentioned they're due by the end of this week. Is it or?
That is correct. So we as a project team have been fairly consistent since day 1 on the project that we would be making this call out, that we would be soliciting that information. I know that staff have done a great job of facilitating that long before I and my team showed up here. We have put out that call out. We have messaged that through the Engagement Wellesley page, setting the deadline for those submissions because, quite frankly, we need appropriate time as a project team to assess and consider any of those requests. That doesn't stop anybody from coming in and making requests at any point through this project. We're asking for that deadline now so we can ensure that we can give it a fair and appropriate assessment in and amongst the full suite of requests and considerations that have been made over a number of years.
Okay. Yeah, and do you know at this point, is it mainly residential, commercial, industrial, or is there a breakdown, or do you not have enough to really?
I might invite Emily to back me up here on this. At the risk of being corrected, we're at 4 requests right now. I believe they are all residential. Okay. And but notwithstanding that those are the requests that have come in, we also have the sites from the 2020 work that was done where a rationalization to remove some areas. As outlined in the paper, we're going to be re-looking at that work as well and ensuring it remains current and relevant and appropriate. And I think that's the answer. I invite I invite anyone to correct the record.
Yeah, not a correction, just an addition. So how this started was, as you can recall, Mayor Nowak in regional plan amendment number 6, when we went through that exercise, there was a series of requests that had come through for settlement area boundary expansions. Some for the Wellesley urban area, some for rural settlement areas. Not all were implemented through that process because it was, I guess, ROPA 6 was kind of partially implemented. There was going to be kind of a second stage to it. And that's when a number of different changes started happening at the provincial level in terms of provincial policy and legislation. And that was set on pause. So we had a series of boundary expansion requests that were, let's call them, they were paused. So for the purpose of what we're doing now, the process is kind of twofold. One is reaching back out to those people or those landowners to either reconfirm their interest in a settlement area boundary expansion. And I would say of those previous ones, there's probably, let's say there's I don't know, 10 or 12 requests. A lot of them were largely employment area requests. Employment area, right?
Lands.
Employment lands, yeah.
Okay, I was just, because
So that was
complete communities, that's what you need. I mean, you have to have both.
exactly. So the previous requests were largely employment area or employment lands requests in various parts of the township. And then what Joe was just speaking about was kind of the additional requests that we've had since then. So there have been some, I believe, I think probably about 4 additional residential requests. Not large pieces of residential land, but residential land nonetheless, and perhaps a couple more employment lands requests as well. So that continues to build as we approach the deadline, which is next Friday, the 19th, as those landowners and their consultants continue to prepare their formal request in a letter or report to us. So as of today, let's call it something like 16 requests total, 10 to 12 previous plus 4 new ones, and then whatever else comes in between now and next Friday.
With a substantial amount of that industrial and
I would say at this point, the request for employment land far outpace the request for residential land, and that generally makes sense at this point. We did add a lot of residential land as part of the ROPA 6 Bill 162 process, so that kind of checks out in our mind what we were expecting to get. But again, there's still another week or so to go.
Good. Thanks for that.
Okay.
The other question I had, you mentioned the source water protection and with the big issue right now with the region, with short on water in the certain areas. I'm assuming there'll be pretty hardcore regulations around any sort of development on, and how will you be identifying where those areas are?
So to Mayor Nowak, Waterloo Regional staff have been involved in the project up to this point. They have shared their data and their information with us. They have been going through some very detailed work in, I'm going to say, recent years in this regard. I'm going to put your question into the feedback received bucket tonight in terms of the importance of groundwater protection. That's certainly something that we care about as a project team as well. And we would intend to be bringing forward policies that are protective of those lands and that regional recharge function.
Yeah. Is GRCA involved in that at all? They're involved in that.
Yes, that's correct.
They would have a lot of the technical.
Yeah, we've reached out to the agencies. That was another thing Joe mentioned in his presentation briefly, but we've reached out to all the review agencies, the region, the GRCA, the school boards, ANOVA, all the let's call them all the players in land development and planning. We had an all agencies meeting that Joe and team facilitated to kind of kick it off, get some comments. We've had some comments back from agencies very positive, including the region. As you know, we still work very closely with the region on a number of different files. Source water protection, arguably maybe the most important. And we are working very closely with them. They still have, despite their different role now in planning, they still have very important Clean Water Act responsibilities when it comes to source water. So certainly working very closely together with them to get the right updates to our policy and strengthen the policies that we already have, which are, in my opinion, leading policies in the province, if not in Canada, when it comes to groundwater and source water protection.
Okay, that's yes, Councillor Hurd.
Your 16 applications, you're going to review them. Do they come to council for final approval or denial or?
To turn the microphone on. So through you, Mayor Nowak, to the councillor, the short answer is yes. We intend on bringing forward as a part of the draft official plan, I'm going to call it a mini report that basically outlines all of the parcels that were assessed and our recommendation as a collective project team, staff team, in terms of in or out. And ultimately, all of the final decisions on this project rest with council. We'll bring you a recommendation, and it'll be incumbent on you to decide to approve, modify, or reject.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's up to you now.
Any further questions? All good. Seeing none. Thank you. We'll move on to P&D 20/2025. The Township of Wellesley new official plan, the background and draft discussion papers for information. So the recommendation is that the council of the Township of Wellesley receive this report for information. Do I have a mover? Councillor Seven, seconder, Councillor Wagner. Any further discussion? Anything from staff? Dad? Good. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, nothing further. Thanks. Just making a note there.
No problem.
Apologies.
I'll call a question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimous. Concludes planning and development.
Okay. We'll move right down to admin and finance, and there's a motion AF&P 34/2025 with a recommendation the council of the Township of Wellesley approve the 2026 fees and charges bylaw amendment as proposed in report AF&P 34/2025. And I have a motion to that effect. Councillor Brick, second by Councillor Hurgett. And I think I'll ask Danny to speak to this. Danny?
Sure, I can speak to the few changes in the, in the recreation portion of the fees and charges. As identified at the last meeting, the hall and kitchen rentals used to state dry facility. That has been taken off and it's renamed as Foxville. That's our smallest community center, so that's why that rate is identified a little bit different than the other community centers. The Linwood Small Hall non-prime, that rate was mistakenly entered as the same rate as the prime rate. So the change has been made to take that to a non-prime rate. Then there is the recreation key fee, which was we've been using for the last 3 years. So that was not added. So that's been re-added in. And then the lost key has been changed to lost key or upgraded key fob. And the rationale for that is we get a lot of requests from patrons to, when they get gym memberships, to get a fob rather than a key card. And this would be to just offset the costs that the municipality has to pay to purchase those fobs. All I have for that.
Okay. Any questions on this? And the planning piece in that as well.
Yeah, we just we added one additional fee for when applicants are requesting to change the conditions of a consent application or a conditionally approved consent application, which we've noticed has been increasing recently. We've also noticed that it requires a bit of staff time to recirculate, to some administrative burden on the Committee of Adjustments. So we've added that fee kind of in conjunction, or not in conjunction, I should say, similar to other adjacent municipalities. It seems like almost everybody has a fee for that except us. So we felt that it was time to include it, given the increasing amount of time we're spending on that. So,
okay,
thank you.
Any questions on any of that? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Are there service board reports? No, not at this point. Okay. So,
Unless somebody else has a service board
I'm sorry.
report.
okay, so I'll need a motion now that the committee of the whole rise and council resume and report. Moved by Councillor Hurgett, second by Councillor Brick. All in favor? That's carried. That the report of the committee of the whole be adopted as set forth in the motions and actions detailed above. Moved by Councillor Seven, second by Councillor Wagner. All in favor, and that's carried. There's been no information items brought forward on no unfinished business that I'm aware of. New business? Any new business? Funny business? CAO update?
Thanks, Mayor Nowak. It'll be short and sweet tonight. Just the budget process is ongoing. We've met here for 2 separate meetings now. And the final budget meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 18th at 5:15 p.m. So hopefully council will have a good chance to review everything in the meantime. And if the public have any input to provide their councilors, this gives them some time to do that before that Thursday meeting of next week. And that's it for me. I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, good. Now we have another recommendation. The Council of the Township of Wellesley approve members of council to attend the all council meeting on Friday, December the 19th, 2025 at 2 p.m. to be held at the Town Hall in the Township of Wellesley. Moved by Councillor Brick, second by Councillor Hurgett. Any discussion on that? I don't know whether we have to bring a report forward on that. It's fairly straightforward. Okay, call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Now we have the bylaws. I need a motion that bylaw number 3334 be read first and second time. Moved by Councillor Seven, second by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? And that's carried. That bylaw 3334 be read third time, passed, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal the bylaw under the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor Hurgett, second by Councillor Brick. All in favor? And that's carried. Budget meeting as action December 18th, council meeting January 13th, council meeting January 27th. Motion, Councillor Wagner, to adjournment. All in favor? And that's carried.